Okay, so hello everyone. So this is going to be video number 4. So we're actually going to have a look at the CBA today. So that's the Certificate in Business Administration. So hopefully there'll be some useful tips here in terms of how to complete the work related to that, where to find everything, a little bit about what it is, the importance of it, and all those kind of points. So we're going to talk quite generally about the CBA to start with, and then I'll look at the specifics in terms of how to fill in the sort of expectations and the workbook. So there are 4 key points we'll look at today. So number 1 will be what the CBA is. So hopefully if you're not sure in terms of how it fits into pharmacy and how it's important, we'll cover that kind of section. Hopefully everyone has some appreciation that kind of business and pharmacy do go hand in hand, whether you're working in the NHS and hospitals or in community pharmacy. Obviously community pharmacies are very much businesses in their own right. So again, it's very key in terms of how those links are made. But there'll be key and more important things you'll learn about running teams, working together, and all these sort of leadership skills, which are actually really key when you're sort of heading up a team, whether that's whatever context you're working in. So lots of important skills you'll learn throughout this process. We'll have a look at Blackboard, where all the information is, kind of what you're learning, and how you should use the information we've supplied to you. We'll then specifically have a look at the workbook. So this is the actual piece of work that you're asked to complete relating or regarding the portfolio. So I'll go through my expectations. There are instructions obviously, and that'll take you through what I would expect, but again, it's probably useful for me to talk you through an example at least. So if you are struggling to know what to do, that you can actually sort of see what I think should be included. The workbook is actually more flexible than you might think, and actually is a point where we just want you to start to think about the process rather than, we're not looking necessarily for specific answers at this point. It's all about you thinking about how it integrates into your sort of future profession. Finally, we will have a look at the RPS framework, so the Royal Pharmaceutical Society framework. So they set out a number of frameworks that actually relate to the workbook and regarding things like leadership. So that's what the society really want its practitioners' skills to have. So we'll have a look at what their kind of expectations are, and hopefully everything will match up between those. So I'll switch to my screencast, and then I'll take you through what's available to you and have a look at the workbook itself. So as per normal, we're starting with Blackboard. So again, CBA stuff. Again, you might occasionally find there are folders within the other units, but if you're not sure, they're normally just replicates of what's in the student development portfolio organisation. So again, it's always the best place to go. So again, I'll swap into student view just so it matches what you guys will see. If we go part 1, so the CBA actually fits under careers management. So this is where you'll find the specific information related to the CBA. Okay, so I've given it its own little folder. Now you can see here that in terms of the minimum requirements, you'll see that I've said that I would like 3 of the 9 domains completed in the workbook. We'll talk about what that actually encompasses and what you actually need to engage with in terms of that. So don't worry about it too much at the moment. Again, I've split it up as 3 just so it actually spreads the work out. Again, I don't want it all to be left until the very end. So again, do yourself a favour and get some of it completed well before you start worrying about part 2 and 3, because they're busy years. So we'll go into the CBA folder. Now we've given you the description, and kind of is the overall description of the CBA. So if you want to have a look about why we've kind of introduced it, what it's there to cover, and all those sorts of things, please do have a read. It's not too bad to comprehend, hopefully. And if there's anything in there that you're not sure about, please let me know, but that's kind of our module descriptor for the specific CBA. Now I've put Lynn's intro slides in here as well. So you had 2 sessions with Lynn last year. This is one of them. I'll try and get the other one put up as well. I don't believe she actually copied me into that one. So again, I'll make sure that that's made available to you as well. But that is a bit of an intro into the CBA a little bit, and she talks a little bit about business and how it's relevant to pharmacy. Hopefully most people appreciate that business is very important in pharmacy. Obviously the key links to community are kind of there from the outset. You're running the pharmacy as a business at that point, so actually having some good knowledge of business strategy, leadership, how to run teams, and all those kind of things are actually very important. But it does cross over into whatever sort of element of work that you're going into, whether that's hospital pharmacy or not even pharmacy at all, where actually they're transferable skills across whatever sort of career path you end up going into. So you can have a look back at those if you're not quite sure what that was all about. The important bit I'm going to take you through is the workbook. So this is actually where you actually have to do something. So this is what your expectations are in terms of the CBA. Now it's important to note that I do require this to be completed for the portfolio. But also, if you want to do the CBA qualification, so the CBA qualification is a kind of separate qualification that you can take between at the end of year 3 over the summer. You'll need this workbook completed for that as well. So that's why I've kind of put it in as a caveat to being done within the portfolio, because if you do want to do it, you do need to have engaged with it at that point, because it will actually use that workbook in that course going forward. But even if you're not, these are useful transferable skills, and they also need to be completed for the portfolio anyway, so do engage with them. So I will bring up the workbook itself. So I've tried to make it as user-friendly as I can. Now again, because you actually be filling this in over 3 years, some of it might not be particularly clear to you at the moment, and things might evolve for you over the next coming years. So you can kind of do it in the order and attack the parts that make sense to you at this moment in time. So I've given you a bit of a blurb in terms of what the CBA workbook is and what's important. So importantly, the workbook takes you through the key elements of the RPS framework, mainly related to leadership and leadership skills. Those leadership skills are really key in business, in reality, in terms of how you run your business. So it takes you through here, so please have a read through of your kind of expectations. It tells you what you need to do if you are interested in doing the CBA qualification at the end of part 3. So you do obviously need to complete this workbook and attend all workshops and lectures within the Henley Business School lectures at least. So the RPS framework is split into 9 domains. I'll take you to the framework shortly. But actually what I'm asking you to do is I want you to have a look at each of those domains. A domain is really just a section, so it kind of compartmentalizes elements of leadership into sort of different sections that you can then kind of deal with separately. And what I'm kind of asking you to do is, in each of those domains, which are all separate and they're all described separately, would be just describe how you would gain that particular knowledge or skill. So have a look at what the domain's actually talking about and how you would actually get to a point where you would develop that skill or knowledge, and how that's going to impact or improve your future practice as a pharmacist. So it's trying to make you see why it's relevant to you as a pharmacist. Think of it some examples about your future practice, about why this would be important for you to have. Now in terms of what I expect, so there are 9 domains in total, and we'll have a look at them in a minute. I would expect you to complete 3 each year. In reality, that spreads it out nicely. Which 3 you complete, I do not mind. So pick the ones that you feel you have the best chance at, or you have the knowledge at that point in time in the course. So it might be that at this point in part 1, you want to pick the more straightforward ones that you understand quite easily, and that you leave some of the domains that you're not quite sure about at the moment. You're going to have more sessions delivered from Henley Business School, and hopefully they'll sort of pick up any of those particular areas, and you'll develop as a student as well with your sort of experience. So you'll pick up knowledge and you'll sort of hopefully make sense of some of those other areas. So I don't mind which 3 areas you complete, but do try and keep up with completing those 3 areas each year. Obviously, once complete, that workbook gets submitted as a whole into the PAD portfolio. It'll be a useful thing to show to future employers that you have engaged with an element of business. Even if you don't do the CBA, you've got this to show that you've thought about business, you've had lectures and workshops from specialists in business, not pharmacy specialists. These are business specialists. And I think that's a really important thing to think of in terms of learning about all those other skills that make a good pharmacist. So let's have a look at the domains themselves. So what I've done is, now these are our direct copies out of the RPS framework, which I will take you to in a minute as well. So they're each labeled with what the domain is. So for instance, domain 1 is inspiring shared purpose. Now that might not mean a lot to you, and actually there's a description about what it's trying to describe. Some of the language that it uses, again, you may not find that easy to understand at the moment, but it will become clearer to you. And actually the RPS link that I've got just here breaks it down into some examples. So that will actually help you understand what it's kind of looking for. So inspiring shared purpose, for instance, is looking at valuing a service ethos. Okay, so this is thinking about like either a company or say the NHS, for instance. What is its kind of values in reality in terms of how it runs as a section, business, or whatever, how you want to determine it. And looking at how to improve services and care. So how can you working together, so having a shared purpose, help with improving the service or care that you can give as a pharmacist, as a pharmacy team. So I've tried to link about why it's important as well. So there's a quick definition in terms of why it's important. So you don't need to answer these questions. These are the sort of definitions that are given within the framework. But what I want you to do in this box here, and this is a sort of reasonable size, so I don't expect you to write tons here. You know, there's a few paragraphs relating to this area. I'd want you to describe how you would gain this particular knowledge or skill in a pharmacy or non-pharmacy. It doesn't have to be all pharmacy related. And to how this would impact your future practice. So an example of thinking about how you would gain some skills or knowledge in inspiring shared purpose, and how you would apply that to improve you as a pharmacist, you as a pharmacy team, you as an employer kind of thing. Now again, you might be thinking, I'm not actually quite sure where to start here in terms of forming that sort of idea. So I'll take you to the RPS, and it actually will take you through, hopefully a little bit clearer in terms of what each of those terms really means. So I'm going to switch over to the RPS. So as you see here, it's a big document, the RPS framework, and you don't need all of it. So please don't go through and read all of it at this stage. Different points will become important to you throughout the course, so you'll see this again. So if we go down to where the domains are, we have domain 1 here, for instance. And again, what it is and why it's important is exactly what I've copied into the workbook. So you don't need to worry about this information being different. It is exactly what I've copied into our workbook. Now what you'll see here is kind of listed some skills relating to this area that it thinks as being either essential. So this is what the RPS would say as a minimum it would like its colleagues to have, or people within the society to have. And it might not be that you have all of these, but you have show some behaviour in this category. And then obviously, depending on your expertise and how much time you've invested, your interest and everything else, you might have skills that would be defined as being proficient, so a little bit above what they would expect, or strong attributes in that area, or sort of exemplary, so sort of the highest level of that. Now when it comes to writing the workbook, really what we're looking at is focusing on these essential skills. So what is essential to us in terms of what we want our pharmacists to have in relation to leadership? So if you have a look at these behaviours, or if you look at the essential tab itself, it says staying true to the organisation's principles and values. But again, what does that actually mean? So it counts the things of working as a role model for your service. That could be for the university, it could be for who you work for, or anything else. So again, in terms of acting as a role model, it's kind of handled within this inspiring shared purpose. Do I focus on how what I do contributes to and affects patients' care and other services? So this is having some knowledge about how you fit into sort of the bigger cog of healthcare and how you all work together to produce the sort of best patient care possible. And that's very similar to this point here, which is, do I enable colleagues to see the wider meaning in what they do? So obviously this is related to leadership. So we're saying that you're kind of at the forefront of helping those around you. So do you help those other colleagues that you have? They won't all be pharmacists at this point. They could be technicians, assistants, all other colleagues, delivery staff, distributors, suppliers. If you're on wards, this could be patients, doctors, nurses, whoever you're sort of working with. But do you actually help those around you understand the wider meaning of what they do and what you do together? And they're the kind of key things that we think are important for you as a pharmacist. You think about yourself and how you integrate into that sort of shared environment of healthcare. So in terms of an example, you might think about actually, if you're working in a pharmacy, how do you help your colleagues around you see the wider meaning in terms of what they do? Now this could range from offering training on specific things to try and increase their knowledge of the services that they're providing, making sure that you have contact with other healthcare providers, so that it's not just sort of pharmacy central here. We're looking at how you interact with it could be nursing homes, GPs, the hospital, your suppliers, all those sorts of other environments where you need to understand, and you and your colleagues need to understand how important it is what they're doing in the sort of bigger scheme of healthcare. Now it's key to note here, and I will just switch back to the workbook here, is that the key point is I want you to think about this. I'm not looking for specific right or wrong answers here. This is very much a space for you to think and explore your thoughts on this topic. So it's for you to think about this domain. So what does it mean? Why is it important to you? And how do you think it's going to impact you as a pharmacist moving forward? So that's why we've introduced it here. Again, these are time for you to explore. I'm not marking these looking for specific points. This is really a chance for you to think about your future career and how leadership is important and how you want to develop those leadership skills to make you the best student, pharmacist, whatever sector of work you go into moving forward. Now that pretty much follows the same throughout the rest of the domains, so I've separated them out into all the domains of the RPS. And again, have a think about which ones you think are most relevant to you right now. So you might not necessarily know about how you would best connect your service up to others. But again, remember over the next 2 years, you're going to have sessions that will look at how community pharmacy integrates with GPs, how it integrates with hospital care, how it integrates with pharmaceutical care. So it might be that you want to earmark these for later on. But hopefully there's enough here that you can at least start to form some of those thoughts, even from part 1. So engaging the team, you could think about how teamwork's important. You do lots of teamwork next year, so it's important that you think about how you engage people within your team. So make sure that everyone's motivated and working to the same sort of standards. So it will seem like a lot of work at the moment, but in reality all I'm asking you is to really describe your thoughts on these areas and think about why it's important. Because once this workbook's completed, as kind of a point of view, you've shown that you've at least engaged with a framework, and there are lots of frameworks depending on whatever area of work you end up going into. But that framework shows that you're able to understand and see where frameworks come into play in terms of business. And also, if you are interested in doing the CBA, we'll use the types of information you've written down in these boxes we'll use that in that part of the course being delivered by Henley. So they will ask you to reflect back on, your thoughts towards leadership domain number 9. How did you think you would learn that information, or how would you gain those skills related to leadership domain number 9? Can you see why those leadership skills are important to you moving forward in pharmacy? So hopefully that's cleared it up a little bit in terms of what the workbook is there. Again, have a think, have a look, start engaging with the RPS framework. Again, I do not expect you to read all of it. We're trying to stick you to some of these domains because they're the really important working knowledge that will be important for you moving forward. So that's about it for video number 4. The last video we have is actually how to upload and form your portfolio online. So that's going to be more of a how-to video. So hopefully if you had any problems uploading your documents, you can obviously have a view of that video. And obviously you've got the other 3 videos ranging from monograph to CPDs to a bit of an overview to have a view if that's useful to you. Again, if you're happy with everything, I don't expect you to have a look at those videos, but please do use them if they are useful to you. All right, so that's it for this session, and until the next one, I will see you later.